She looked like a tourist, so why did the Marine sergeant go silent when she chambered her first round? The sun hadn't yet cleared the Colorado ridgelines when Anna Hansen walked through the main gates of the most elite precision shooting facility in North America. Her boots crunched the gravel with quiet purpose, worn jeans brushing against the canvas rifle case slung over her shoulder. She looked out of place among the hard faces, the military gear, the crisp uniforms. Her simple navy jacket bore no rank, no insignia, no history. Only the steam from her thermos curled upward as she paused, took one long breath, and stepped inside the Colorado Precision Shooting Academy. She could feel them watching her, some subtly, others not at all. The desk sergeant barely glanced up. "Help you, miss?" Anna smiled politely. "I called about the open range session. My name's Anna Hansen." He flipped a clipboard. No organization listed, no endorsements, no record. Just a daily fee paid in cash and a note. Non-affiliated civilian. First. Mistake. He handed her a clipboard full of waivers. "You shot at this level before?" "Yes," she replied, carefully. But that was a half-truth. She hadn't just shot at this level. She had quietly trained for it alone, obsessively, for 4 years. Through spreadsheets of ballistic data, wind calculations in cold forests, and long hours spent decoding sniper handbooks most soldiers only skimmed. But none of that mattered here. Here, no one cared where she came from. They only cared whether she could shoot. Inside the morning briefing room, surrounded by war-hardened men and women, Anna felt the gravity of her silence. Everyone else carried gear worth thousands. Night Force scopes, carbon bipods, tactical vests. With unit patches and battlefield scuffs, Anna had a basic Remington 700 modified quietly. Tuned precisely, but plain to the eye. She kept her eyes on the safety brief, scribbling notes. "New shooters today," came the announcement. "Let's keep things tight. If you're not up to spec, you'll be asked to leave. We're not a hunting club. You want that? There's one 10 miles down the road." Chuckles. A few sideways glances. Anna didn't flinch, because she'd heard this before. Too young, too soft, too foreign, and female? Forget it. But she also remembered what her father once told her, crouched in the wind-battered wilds of southern Denmark, when she was just 18 and landing one cold shot after another. Let them underestimate you. That's your first advantage. She smiled slightly. It wasn't ego. It was peace. The real battle wasn't out there on the range. It was inside her. Always had been. She didn't come here to prove anyone wrong. She came to prove herself right. Range 3 was quiet when Anna laid out her kit. The rifle looked plain. The scope wasn't name brand. Her data sheet was handwritten, not printed. But every piece had been carefully selected. Tested, adjusted, built for function, not appearance. The wind was light, but shifting. Slight left drift. 300 yards, a good place to start. She adjusted the scope, read the flag's motion at the far end of the range, then set her cheek against the stock. Her breathing slowed. Then she heard it. "Check out the tourist," someone muttered nearby. "Probably thinks this is a carnival booth," another said. Their laughter wasn't cruel, just lazy, dismissive. Anna's finger rested along the side of the trigger. Not angry, just aware. They think you're here for fun. Good. Range Officer Hutchinson strolled over, skeptical eyes running over her deer. "You sure you want to start at 300? "Yes, sir," Anna replied. "If that's permitted." He raised an eyebrow, then turned toward the range controls. "It's your shot. Just know we expect sub-MOA accuracy. You'll need to group inside 2 inches, or you're done for the day." Anna nodded, chambered around, and centered her breath. The world slowed. Not because of nerves, but because that's what she trained to do. Her body knew how to align to the target, how to time the breath, how to isolate the shot. First. Round cracked. Dead center. Hutchinson blinked. He adjusted the spotting scope. Said nothing. Second shot. Same hole. Third. fourth, fifth. By now, the murmurs had gone quiet. Even the Marine sergeant across the range had put down his calculator, the SWAT sniper. 2 bays over adjusted his glasses, watching through his own scope. Who the hell is she? Anna fired 10 rounds in a methodical rhythm, each one precise, each one controlled. By the end, there wasn't a spread. There was just a ragged, thumb-sized tear in the paper where every bullet had passed. She stood up slowly, sliding the bolt open, breathing through her nose. Range Officer Hutchinson walked back, eyes now calculating something else entirely. You military? He asked. No, sir. Father was? She nodded. Still, that kind of group. He paused. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? Denmark, she replied simply. It was the truth, but it wasn't the whole truth, because there was something Anna hadn't told them. Not yet. Back in her apartment, hundreds of miles from the nearest battlefield, was a wall covered in wind drift charts and trajectory tables, whiteboards full of handwritten formulas, shelves stacked with declassified sniper manuals in 5 languages. She wasn't a hobbyist. She was an obsession, and what they'd seen at 300 yards. That was just warm-up. The next morning, she requested 500 yards. A few heads turned. Hutchinson didn't hide his surprise. You sure? Yes. She adjusted elevation, recalibrated for the morning's denser air. Target up, slight rise in terrain, wind gusting intermittent. About 32 miles per hour from 1 o'clock. First shot center, second just left. Adjusted. Third center again. She finished the string with a grouping that made the observing Air Force captain narrow her eyes. That's elite-level work, the woman muttered. No way she's self-taught. But Anna was. She'd studied thousands of hours of footage, not to mimic military shooters, but to decode them, reverse engineer their rhythm, translate instinct into science. And it worked. She hadn't come here to shock anyone, but the truth was beginning to ripple through the academy. This wasn't luck. This wasn't charm. It was mastery. Silent, disciplined, and real. Back at her apartment that night, Anna stared at her logs, line after line of handwritten data, margins filled with notes from her father's letters. He had taught her everything he knew, but never expected her to take it this far. Yet here she was, on American soil, in a military academy that wanted her gone just days ago. And now couldn't stop watching still. That made her uneasy, because attention is a double-edged bullet. They didn't yet know how far her skill extended, and some didn't want to, but all that would change soon because by week's end, one man would fly in with a challenge that could change everything. And when Commander Jake Morrison, the Navy SEAL sniper legend, handed her his personal Barrett 50 cal, the entire academy would fall silent, and the world would finally ask, who is Anna Hansen? Why would a Navy SEAL place his most prized weapon into the hands of a foreign civilian in front of 200 elite shooters? It began with a call from Admiral Patricia Chun. Colonel Harrison wasn't expecting. It's certainly not at 06:00 hours on a Wednesday morning while sipping burnt coffee and reviewing range maintenance schedules. But when Chun spoke, the military listened. Colonel, we need your facility. 3-day evaluation, precision protocols. This isn't training. It's validation, real-world readiness. And then came the catch. We need a civilian shooter. She said, not military, not competition trained. Someone independent, unpredictable, skilled enough to test our team's limits. Harrison blinked. His mind flipped through files, certifications, instructors. None fit, except one. Captain. Torres leaned forward during the staff meeting that followed. Sir, what about Anna Hansen? The room went still. She's restricted to basic ranges, someone objected. We flagged her as a security anomaly. She's also the best shooter we have, Torres replied. And the only one who meets their criteria. Harrison didn't. Like it, she was unknown, uncontrolled, unconventional. But there was no denying the truth. Anna had been quietly outperforming veterans since the day she arrived, and the SEALs needed someone who didn't fit their training templates. So the decision was made. Anna would face a capabilities assessment, real conditions, real pressure. She would be tested not just as a marksman, but as a thinker, a tactician, a threat. And if she passed, she would stand opposite America's most elite warriors. With live rounds and real reputations on the line, the test day arrived with overcast skies and a biting wind. Range 12 to 1,000 yards of unforgiving terrain, wind-shear corridors, and sloped elevation. The kind of course where even seasoned snipers blinked. Anna arrived alone. Same practical clothes. Same quiet eyes. No fanfare, no ego. She nodded once at the instructors, unpacked her gear with deliberate calm, and waited. Master Sergeant Williams gave the briefing. Targets at 600, 700, 800, and 900 yards. 10 rounds per range. Timed engagement. Sub-memo required. He didn't smile when he spoke to her. Still didn't trust what he couldn't define. Anna listened, nodded, and stepped onto the line. At 600 yards, her grouping measured 7 inches. Williams stared at the caliper twice before logging the data. At 700, her group held under an inch despite erratic wind. By 800 yards, even Torres, the one who'd believed in her, leaned in closer, visibly stunned by Anna's smooth compensation, her ability to read conditions like a seasoned combat shooter. Then came 900, impossible territory for most civilians. Anna fired 10 rounds in rhythm. Not rushed, not theatrical. Each shot was preceded by a tiny moment of breath, wind check, mental math. The final grouping? 11 inches. Not perfect, but not humanly explainable either. When she cleared her rifle and stepped back, nobody clapped. But they didn't speak either, because something had shifted. They were no longer asking how she shot like that. They were wondering what she really was. Colonel Harrison sat alone reviewing the logs that night. Distance, wind, velocity, groupings, and the unspoken truth hit him. They'd flagged the most capable shooter in their system as a problem, because she didn't come through the front door. He called Torres. Activate her for the SEAL level. Saturday morning. Quiet tension. Anna arrived at Harrison's office, where she'd once been accused of deception. This time, there was no interrogation, only clipped explanations and simple offer. The Navy needs a shooter. You'll be participating in tactical simulations. Expect engagement ranges up to 1,200 yards. Opposing the SEALs directly, Anna didn't hesitate. I'm ready, Torres smiled. And Anna? The team leader is Commander Jake Morrison. Anna blinked. Morrison's name was legend. Multi-tour sniper, dozens of confirmed combat engagements, innovator of urban counter-sniper doctrine, one of the few men in American history trusted to train Tier 1 shooters. Anna swallowed the tension quietly. This wouldn't be shooting paper anymore. This would be battle mind. Morrison arrived late Sunday, short, solid, quiet. The kind of man who didn't raise his voice because he didn't need to. He reviewed the Academy's facilities, shook hands with the instructors, then asked one question. Where's the civilian? Anna stepped forward. He looked her over in a single scan. Posture, hands, eyes. You're Hanson? Yes, sir. I've heard some things, he said, unslinging a heavy black case. Tomorrow we find out if they're true. He tapped the case once before leaving. Inside was his personal Barrett, .50 cal rifle. The same weapon he'd used in Afghanistan. The one that had ended a 4-day standoff with a single 1,200-yard shot. No one touched that rifle, not even his team. The next morning, they gathered at Range 19, SEALs in position, electronic targets set. Sensors live. Anna was briefed separately. She would engage as an unknown sniper. Her job was to oppose Morrison's team with precision and timing. Simulating enemy threats in dynamic environments. She would not be coddled. She would be hunted. The first scenario tested urban overwatch conditions. Anna found elevation, took position, and began engaging simulation targets before the SEALs could clear them. She was fast, unrelenting, at 650 yards through a window slit. She nailed the first target in 47 seconds, second at 720 yards, compensating for 35 miles per hour left drift dead center. Morrison's voice crackled on comms. Opposition is performing above sim parameters. Adjust tactics. Anna smiled. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Not doubted, not dismissed. Simply engaged. By midday, she'd forced Morrison's team to revise their counter-sniper protocols. At 1,000 yards, she dropped targets while they were still moving. Calculated for elevation. Gain. Corrected for heat shimmer. No chatter, no praise. Just one shot after another. Performed with surgical silence, and then Morrison walked over. He said nothing at first, just studied her face, her rifle, her hands, then quietly unlocked the case. You ever fired a .50 cal before? Anna shook her head. Good, he said. This one's mine. You've earned the right. Gasps rippled through the watching instructors. No one touched that rifle. No one. He placed it in her arms. It was massive, unforgiving, built for war, but in her hands, it felt right. We've got a target at 1,200 yards, Morrison said. One shot, unknown wind. One chance. Anna adjusted her breathing. Through the scope, the world narrowed. The target was just a fleck against the earth. She studied the flags, calculated drop. Corrected for 847 feet of elevation change. 8 miles per hour wind from 2 o'clock, 23 MOA. No guessing, just execution. One breath, one pause, trigger pull. The Barrett roared. Time held still. Then impact, dead center. A puff of dust, silence, then Morrison's voice cut through it all. First round, unknown distance. Unfamiliar rifle. He looked at her. Genuinely impressed. That is exceptional shooting. Anna exhaled slowly. The rifle still warm in her hands, for once. There was no whisper of doubt behind her, only a rising storm of respect. But she knew this wasn't the end, because what would follow that shot wasn't just recognition. It was reckoning. Why did the colonel call her into his office the next morning and lock the door behind her? The academy was quiet the morning after the shot that changed everything. The .50 cal round had barely stopped reverberating through the mountain air when Anna became a name whispered across the barracks. The mess hall, the briefing rooms, not as a curiosity, not as a fluke, but as a problem. Because when someone outside the system performs better than those inside it, it doesn't feel like inspiration. It feels like disruption. She arrived early. That day, out of habit. Not to be praised, not to bask in it. She had logs to update, data to record. Her calculations from the day before were already turning over in her mind. She knew the air pressure had shifted slightly during that final scenario. She should have accounted for it sooner. Even perfect shots deserve post-mortem. But when she entered the main building, something felt different. Instructors whispered and looked away when she passed. A few of the advanced students stared openly, no longer laughing. Some with admiration, some with something colder. By the time she reached her locker, Captain Torres was already waiting. Colonel Harrison wants to see you, she said. Anna blinked. Is there a problem? Torres didn't answer. Just nodded once. Anna followed. The hallway to Harrison's office felt longer this time, and when the door closed behind her with a soft click, it locked. He didn't shout, didn't threaten. He simply stood behind his desk, decorated in photos and citations, arms folded. Miss Anson, he began. We need to talk about what happened yesterday. She waited. There's no question you impressed Commander Morrison and his team, frankly everyone, but we've also received inquiries from higher levels, wanting to know how a civilian with no documented training managed to outperform military standard shooters in a Navy SEAL evaluation. She didn't flinch. I answered all your previous questions truthfully, sir. That's not the issue. Anymore, he replied. The issue is your capability. He walked around the desk, voice tightening. You understand what your performance implies, don't you? That our certification standards missed you. That our evaluation protocols failed to identify this kind of ability in someone outside the system. That makes us vulnerable. Anna felt her jaw clench slightly. Vulnerable to truth or to embarrassment? You're not in trouble, Harrison continued, but you're under scrutiny. We've been contacted by Naval Special Warfare. They want a full report. They want to know how someone like you trained. Who trained you? Why we didn't recognize it sooner. Anna? Remain calm. Will my access be restricted again? Harrison studied her, the silence thick with tension. No, not yet. But understand your visibility is no longer in your control. You've proven your skill. Now you'll be watched. He paused. You can either help us understand how you got here, or people above me will start guessing. Anna exhaled slowly. I trained with my father. Danish military sniper, Afghanistan. I studied for 4 years, not in uniform, but with intention. I didn't come here to disrupt anything. I came here to improve. Harrison nodded, face unreadable. Understood. But your presence now means more than just practice. We'll keep you looped into the evaluation process, but from this point forward, you're not invisible. She left the office with steady steps, but in her chest, something tightened. She had worked so hard to be overlooked, and now that armor was cracking, the rest of the week passed with quiet pressure. Anna was invited, formally, now to support Morrison's final evaluations, no longer as a civilian participant, but as a critical element, an opposing force. The Navy had rewritten the rules, and the Academy had no choice but to follow. Anna kept her routine simple. Range, calculations, logs, no interviews, no conversations. She wasn't interested in fame or viral moments. The shot with the 50 cal? Let others talk about it. She was already thinking about wind correction drift at longer distances. But behind the scenes, everything was changing. Her name was circulating in circles she hadn't chosen. SEAL Command, Joint Special Operations Training. Units, even NATO liaisons had begun asking quiet questions. Who trained her? How did they miss her? Is she an outlier or a pattern? And perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all, is she a threat or a solution? Late one evening, as the sun dropped low behind the range, Morrison approached Anna. As she packed her gear, he didn't waste time with small talk. Tomorrow's the real test, he said. She nodded. Simulated battlefield, unknown targets, life comes. You'll be our opposition again, but this time, it's closer to combat. She looked up. Understood. Morrison studied her quietly. You're good, Hanson. But more than that, you adapt. That's rare. He hesitated. I've trained dozens of shooters. Many reach technical proficiency. Very few think tactically like you do. That tells me something. What does it tell you? She asked. That if you ever wanted to go further, beyond this academy, you'd have options. Dangerous ones. Important ones. Anna lowered her gaze. I didn't come here to be recruited. I know, he said. That's what makes. You're even more dangerous. That night, Anna couldn't sleep. The moonlight spilled across her desk, illuminating the pages of her notebook, wind charts, bullet drop equations, notes in her father's old handwriting. She reached for a worn envelope from her bottom drawer. Inside, an old photograph, her father, kneeling in the Afghan dust, rifle beside him, sun behind his shoulders. On the back, one line scribbled in Danish. When the world underestimates you, let them, then, do what you came to do. Anna traced the edge of the photo with her thumb. Tomorrow, she'd step onto that field again, not just as a shooter, but as a mirror, because the real test wasn't hers anymore. It was theirs. Could they handle what they couldn't control? The next morning arrived sharp and clear. Morrison's team moved like shadows, silent, precise, lethal, and across the terrain, Anna took her position. She didn't wear a uniform. No rank on her shoulder, no flag on her sleeve, just her rifle. Her breath, her mind. The scenario began. Targets emerged and vanished in seconds. The SEALs advanced, cautious but confident. Then Anna fired, one, then another. Not just accurate but intelligent shots, suppression where it mattered, timing that disrupted team movement. She was no longer just shooting targets, she was reading their behavior and beating them to it. Morrison's voice came through the comms. Opposition is exceeding parameters, adjusting team formations. Anna heard it, filed it away, and kept shooting. By the time the scenario ended, Morrison's team had been forced to rewrite half their standard engagement protocols. Anna descended from her position just as the SEALs arrived at the base of the course. Morrison approached her slowly, not smiling, but something close. "You don't belong here," he said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. "You belong somewhere bigger." Then he handed her a folded slip of paper. "Contact, Defense Advanced Evaluation Division. Don't make any decisions now, but know these people are watching. And they're not the kind who take no for an answer." Anna took the paper without speaking, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if that was good news. Because when the military begins to see you as an asset, the price of your freedom changes. Why did the SEAL team stop the simulation mid-run and surround her rifle position in total silence? It happened just before sunset. The mountain shadows stretched long across Range 18, painting the ground with lines of fading gold and blue. Anna lay prone behind her rifle, her cheek pressed to the stock. Watching dust swirl in the canyon below, her calculations were already made. MOA dialed, wind correction set. Then, from her comms, "Hold fire, all units, halt movement, unusual." That command didn't come from Morrison, it came from above. And as Anna sat up, scanning the terrain, she noticed something that made her breath catch. The SEAL team wasn't advancing. They were approaching her directly. No weapons raised, no aggression. Just 7 of the most elite warriors on Earth, surrounding her position like they'd reached the center of some secret battlefield. Morrison climbed the slope last, quiet, watchful. When he reached her, he didn't speak right away. He knelt beside her, gazing at the valley below. Then finally, "They've seen enough," Anna swallowed. "Enough of what?" "Enough to know the truth." She didn't answer. She didn't have to, because the truth he was talking about wasn't her grouping at 1,000 yards. It wasn't even her uncanny ability to disrupt a SEAL team's movement with perfectly timed suppressive fire. It was that she didn't blink under pressure, that her instincts were trained, not taught, that she had done all of it outside their system, and now? That made her useful, but also dangerous. The next morning, she sat across from Colonel Harrison again. This time, there was no locked door. No suspicion, only coffee, paperwork, and silence. Finally, he slid a folder across the desk. Inside, a recommendation. Letter, already signed by Commander Morrison. It was for a civilian counter-sniper advisory position attached to the Defense Advanced Evaluation Division, a role usually reserved for retired Special Forces operators. Anna looked up. "I'm not interested in a career I never asked for," Harrison nodded. "You may not have asked, but you've already started it." She closed the folder calmly, deliberately. "I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came here to improve alone." "You're not alone anymore," he replied. "Not after what you did." He leaned forward, voice low. "You shot better than people with 20 years. In combat, you read terrain faster than satellites. You think in ways that some of our best people don't. You may want to be left alone, Miss Hansen. But now, you're not being ignored. You're being counted on." She stood slowly, the folder still resting on the desk. "I'll think about it." But she already knew the truth. They weren't offering her a path. They were setting one. "Anna, returned to the range later that day. Not to train, not to prove anything. She just needed to breathe. She unpacked her gear in silence, sat on the gravel beside her rifle, and stared out over the Colorado horizon. For 4 years, she trained for the peace that came from perfect execution, from silence, from hitting the mark when no one expected it. Now she was being asked to trade that peace for recognition, for access, for power. And something about that offer made her uneasy. She didn't want medals. She didn't want handshakes from generals. She wanted her own discipline, her own focus, her father's philosophy quiet. Excellence, no spotlight. But maybe, in a world full of noise, the only way to protect that silence was to step into the center of it. The following week, Admiral Patricia Chun arrived at the academy. No ceremony, no entourage. She came with one mission: to meet the civilian shooter whose name had caused ripples across multiple commands. Anna met her in the long-range observation tower, where the SEAL team had once watched her final shot through scopes they now carried in awe. Admiral Chun extended her hand. "You've made quite an impression, Miss Hanson." Anna shook it, eyes calm. "I didn't intend to." "Good," Chun said. "The ones who intend to impress usually don't." They stood in silence a moment, watching a distant team run simulations. Then Chun handed Anna a document packet. "This isn't enlistment. It's not even a job offer in the traditional sense. It's a program, experimental, high-level. You'd operate as an independent advisor and opposition shooter for counter-sniper. Protocol development." Anna skimmed the front page. "Security clearance tiers, travel permissions, attached unit liaisons. You want me to train your people?" She asked. "No," Chun said. "We want you to challenge them. We want you to find their blind spots before real enemies do." Anna held the packet tighter. "That's not what I came here to do." "I know," Chun replied softly. "But it might be what you're meant to do." That night, Anna sat by her open window. Colorado stars scattered across the sky like distant targets. Her old rifle lay cleaned and oiled beside her, the same one she had carried in Denmark, the same one that had started all of this. She thought about her father, about the way he used to sit beside her at dusk, guiding her breath through silence, about the way he never asked her to be a soldier, only to be precise. He had never pushed her into anything. He'd simply taught her how to hold herself steady when the world trembled, and now the world was trembling, because someone like her, an outsider, a ghost in their system, had shown them something they didn't expect, something they didn't train for, something they couldn't own. And that, more than anything, was what made them want her, not just her trigger control, but her mind, her silence, her refusal to fit in. The next morning, Anna didn't go to Range 3. She went to Range 14, where only instructors were permitted. When the gate guard saw her, he reached for the call button, then noticed the new access card clipped to her jacket. It was red. Level 6. He stepped aside. No words, just a quiet nod. Anna walked forward, her boots crunching softly on gravel, eyes locked on the horizon. She wasn't here to prove she belonged anymore. She was the standard now, and soon others would come, soldiers, officers, analysts, all eager to see the girl with the clean gear and flawless grouping, the one who never bragged, never folded, and never missed. Some would admire her, some would question her, but all of them would feel it, that impossible calm, the one that said, "You may have trained for this, but I was born for it." Why did she refuse the Academy's award ceremony and show up on the shooting line instead? 2 weeks had passed since Anna's final evaluation with the SEALs. The Academy had changed, not visibly at first. The concrete walls still bore the same training posters. The ranges still echoed with sharp cracks and distant echoes, but there was a new energy, a hush when she passed, a weight behind every glance, a realization among even the most elite shooters that something had shifted, because she was no longer the quiet girl with the Danish accent and outdated boots. She was the anomaly who'd rewritten what they thought was possible. Colonel Harrison called it capability disruption. The instructors called it unprecedented. Anna called it uncomfortable, because what she wanted most still was to shoot, to improve, to learn. But now, every time she stepped onto a range, she wasn't just a student. She was a symbol, and symbols attract more than attention. They attract expectations. The invitation arrived in a formal envelope, a full academy ceremony, dress code, formal. Citation: Outstanding Civilian Contribution to National Training Effectiveness. Signed by Admiral Patricia Chun herself. The accompanying note from Harrison read, "You'll be recognized in front of the Joint Command Board. You've earned it." Anna stared at the envelope for a long time, then placed it beside her rifle case, and went to clean her barrel. On the day of the ceremony, the Academy auditorium filled with decorated veterans, command staff, instructors, and visiting. Brass seats were marked. Photographers stood ready. But when her name was called, the seat stayed empty in the back of the building. Captain Torres stood quietly near the exit. She said nothing, just looked down at her phone. A message from Anna, 2 words, range 9, while the command staff applauded a citation without a recipient. Anna lay prone in the wind, eye pressed to her scope, adjusting for a sudden gust sweeping in from the south ridge. The target at 920 yards shimmered with heat waves. She blinked slowly, focused, and exhaled. Trigger squeeze, clean. Break. Steel rang, a distant echo, a perfect hit. She chambered another round, then another. Each one precise, each one free of applause, or praise, or flashbulbs. And it felt right, because she wasn't here for ceremonies. She wasn't built for stages. She was built for the moment between breath and bullet, the quiet space where everything slowed and became simple that evening. As the range lights dimmed and brass medals clinked over wine glasses, Anna sat cross-legged in her apartment, rifle disassembled and laid out like sacred pieces of a ritual. She wiped each part slowly. Her mind drifted to the moment Morrison handed her his Barrett. The way he hadn't asked, he had simply known. And she had responded with silence and a shot that still hadn't stopped echoing through the halls of the academy. But now, that silence was being filled with emails, invitations, interviews, NATO advisory board requests, even a proposal to speak at a military symposium. She stared at her inbox like it was a pile of explosives. What they didn't understand, what no one seemed to understand, was that she wasn't trying to lead them. She was trying to stay still. Week later, Torres caught up with her in the observation tower. Anna was logging wind patterns, again alone. "I brought your award," Torres said, holding a sleek glass plaque with her name etched in gold. "They wanted to mail it. I figured I'd do it myself." Anna took it gently, read the words, then set it down beside her notebook. Torres sat beside her, legs dangling over the edge. "You?" "No," she said. "Most people would kill for the attention you're avoiding." "I'm not most people." "No," Torres said softly. "You're not." They sat in silence for a while, watching the flags twitch, feeling the slow shift of the air. Then Torres spoke again. "You ever think about what comes next?" Anna didn't answer, so Torres continued. "They're asking about you in D.C. Command wants to develop a civilian track advisors who train alongside our best. You could write doctrine, test systems, influence policy." Anna exhaled slowly. "I just want to shoot." "Yeah," Torres said, standing. "But the truth is, people are already aiming where you've already been." Anna didn't look up, because she already knew. She was no longer just part of the academy. She was changing it. And change, real change, never comes quietly. That weekend, Anna received an envelope she didn't expect. It was marked with a Danish military return address. Inside, a commendation. Not from any U.S. institution, but from her father's old unit. It wasn't ceremonial. It wasn't flashy. Just a single citation, hand-signed. For marksmanship that brings honor to those who taught in silence. Anna read it 3 times, and for the first time in weeks, she let her shoulders drop. This was the one that mattered, not because it was official, but because it was from home. From him, on Monday morning, the academy woke to a subtle change. A new sign on Range 15. It read, Advanced Civilian Instructor. A. Hansen, and below it, appointments by request only. Torres had approved it. Harrison had signed off. No big announcement, just a quiet shift. The way Anna preferred it. She didn't walk taller, didn't speak louder, but every advanced shooter on campus now knew what that sign meant. It meant that the person behind that door had nothing left to prove. She wasn't chasing recognition. She was the benchmark. Still, Anna kept the old sign from her first day. Range 3, basic rifle practice, folded neatly in her locker. A reminder that no one had welcomed her, that no one had believed her, that her path hadn't started with an invitation, but with a refusal to back down. And now, as she walked the range where she was once dismissed, every footstep carried something heavier than pride, responsibility, because someone was watching her. Right now, maybe it was a young woman, new boots, unpolished rifle, carrying the same silence Anna once wore like armor. And maybe that girl had already been laughed at by someone who didn't see what was in her eyes. And maybe, just maybe, that girl needed to know that the ones they underestimate are the ones who never stop hitting center mass. Why did she leave her rifle disassembled on the bench and disappear without telling anyone where she'd gone? They noticed by noon, Range 15 was cold, empty, no gear, no targets, no Anna at first. They assumed it was a day off everyone needs. One, even her. But by the 3rd missed appointment, quiet unease turned into murmurs. Captain Torres checked her logbook. Nothing canceled, no messages, no notes. Her locker was untouched. Rifle disassembled on the bench, pieces neatly arranged. Like a frozen thought, Anna Hansen was gone. She wasn't far, just high, up near the old maintenance road that curled above the highest ridge, where the wind cuts sharp through the pines and cell signals die in the trees. She hiked for hours without speaking, not to herself, not to the wind, just thinking, just breathing, because something had been growing inside her, slow and invisible doubt. It hadn't started with the attention, or the promotions, or the Navy phone calls. It started the moment she began wondering if her identity was being rewritten for her, not by her. First she'd been a student, then an outlier, then an asset, now a symbol, a cautionary tale, a legend in a place that didn't have room for legends who didn't follow their playbook. But who was she, really? A shooter? A teacher? A tool? She wasn't sure anymore. She sat down at the edge of a rocky overlook, the academy building small and silent in the valley below, and for the first time in months, she wanted to disappear, not to quit, but to remember what it felt like to shoot. For herself, not for their data, not for their doctrine, not even for their grudging respect, just for the stillness, the breath, the break, the kind of clarity that doesn't come from status, but from silence. Back at the academy, Torres was pacing. Harrison had already run her name through base security. No alerts, no travel logs, no indication. She'd left campus. She's not missing, Torres said, to no one in particular. She's just ... reminding us we never knew how she operates. And yet, something in her voice betrayed concern. Because for all Anna's consistency, for all her control, there had been something in her eyes lately. Something fraying, something adrift. That night, Anna stayed in the mountains. The cold didn't bother her. She brought gear, a thermos, a notebook, just enough to feel human again. She opened her father's old field manual. the one with the coffee stains and worn edges. She flipped to the page he used to quote. When the mission becomes louder than the purpose, stop. Recenter. A sniper's mind must remain stiller than the scope. She let those words sit, and beneath them, she scribbled something new. What do I want this to become? She didn't have the answer yet, but she was finally asking. She returned at sunrise. No one saw her arrive. No security checkpoint logged her in. She simply appeared on range 15 as if she'd never left. The rifle still lay disassembled, right? Where she'd left it. No one had touched it. She sat down, slowly cleaned each part, and began reassembly. Not with hurry, not with shame, just precision. Torres arrived 10 minutes later, breath caught in her throat when she saw Anna on the bench. You disappeared, she said. I needed to think. About leaving? Anna paused. No, she said. About staying. Torres sat beside her. Neither spoke for a while, then Anna turned, eyes softer now. I don't want to become something I didn't choose. I don't want to spend my life as a case study. Torres nodded. Then don't. But if you walk away completely, they'll use your absence as proof that civilians like you can't handle this, that it was all a fluke, a ghost story. Anna's jaw tightened. You're not a ghost, Anna. Torres said, you're a blueprint. That word hung in the air like smoke. Anna looked back down at her rifle, a blueprint, not a symbol, not a weapon, not a mascot, but a map, something others could follow without asking for permission. The next week changed everything. Anna returned to the range, but on her own. Terms: no cameras, no observers unless invited. She restructured her instruction blocks, refusing to take students who weren't fully present. Her drills were harder, quieter, focused on mental discipline more than mechanics. And the results? Immediate. Shooter. Confidence improved. Error margins dropped. More than that, the silence on the range deepened, not from fear, but from focus, because Anna wasn't training soldiers anymore. She was training thinkers. Then came the unexpected visit. Not from command, from a girl, 17, nervous, hands tucked into the sleeves of her hoodie. She wasn't enrolled, just a visitor with a military parent. Anna found her sitting near the observation rail on a Sunday afternoon. The girl looked up. You're her, right? Anna sat beside her. Who? The one who made them change the rules. Anna said nothing. But the girl reached into her backpack and pulled out a notebook filled with hand-drawn targets, wind diagrams, shooting formulas copied from YouTube videos. My dad says I should. Wait, that I'm not ready, that girls like me don't belong in places like this. Anna turned slowly. And what do you say? I say, I need to see someone do it before I believe it. Anna nodded, then handed the girl her own pen. Then draw faster. That night, Anna stood alone on range 7. She didn't bring her gear, just the wind meter and a small notebook. She watched the flags, counted the drift, listened to the silence, and for the first time in months, she felt something return. Not validation, not triumph, belonging. Not because they gave it to her, because she took it. Not with noise, not with demand, but with precision and presence. Why did she reject the black badge, the one that meant full access, full clearance, and zero return? The letter came on a Monday, simple envelope, no insignia, no rank. Just wait. Inside was the official offer. Tier 0 clearance assignment. To a Mobile Joint Operations Evaluation Unit, the Black Badge. It was a ghost-level designation, unseen by public rosters, unknown to most uniformed officers. Total mobility, unlimited access, no paper trail, only one thing in return. You don't get to come back. Anna stared at the card. Gloss black, her name, engraved beneath a silent seal and a single line at the bottom. Observer, advisor, irreplaceable. She set it on her table, walked outside, and didn't come back until nightfall. Torres heard the news first. She found Anna at range 12, though. Next morning, hands tucked in her jacket, eyes hollow. They offered it? Anna nodded. And? I haven't answered. Torres didn't say anything right away. Just kicked the pebble across the gravel. You should know, she finally said. Only 2 civilians have ever been offered black badge status. Neither were shooters. No. Torres said, but neither were replacements either. You'd be the first. That word again. First. Anna hated it. It always sounded like an award, but it felt like a target. She looked toward the distant ridgeline where she'd taken that first 50 cal shot. The place everything changed. Why now? She asked. Why me? Torres shrugged. Because you don't miss, because you don't talk, because you don't want it. And that scares them. Anna laughed softly. It hurt. Then maybe I shouldn't accept. Torres turned. Then maybe you'll regret it. That night, Anna walked into the old classroom room B7. No one used it anymore. She flicked on the visor. Lights. Dust floated through the air like memory. This was the room she'd been questioned in during her first week at the academy, where she'd been accused of falsifying scores, where she'd been told, civilians don't get this good without lying. Now the room sat abandoned. No plaques, no applause, just silence. She pulled a chair into the middle of the floor and sat, and, for once, she let herself feel everything. The disbelief, the isolation, the impossible weight of being the best at something they said she had no right to be good at. What does it cost to be undeniable in a system that didn't plan for you? Her hands trembled, not from fear, from exhaustion. She had become a symbol, but symbols crack when they stop feeling human. She needed to bleed again, not from wounds, from truth. 2 days later, Morrison returned, unannounced. He stood in the archway of Range 15, watching her run wind drills with a new recruit. When Anna finally noticed him, she paused, lowered her spotting scope, and nodded once. Didn't expect you back, she said. I had to see it for myself. Morrison replied, rumor is, you've been offered the badge. Anna didn't answer. Morrison took a breath. I got mine 12 years ago. She looked at him. Finally, did you regret it? He stared past her at the targets in the distance. No, but it's lonely. You get everything they promise. The gear, the clearance, the intel. But something disappears too. What? The ground, the feeling that you belong somewhere solid. Because from that moment on, you don't walk with them. You walk for them. He stepped forward, voice quiet. They won't own you, Anna, but they'll keep needing you until there's nothing left but the mission. And what's wrong? With that, he didn't smile, because one day, the mission ends and you forget how to live without it. That night, Anna opened her notebook and wrote a question at the top of the page. What does success look like if no one sees you anymore? She stared at it for a long time, and below it, she wrote her answer. It looks like silence that isn't peace. She didn't return the badge immediately. She carried it in her pocket. Through training runs, through lectures, through moments of perfect focus behind the rifle, where for 10 seconds, the world narrowed to breath and steel and wind and nothing else. But when she returned to her quarters that Friday, she laid it down, not on her nightstand, not in her locker, on the range bench, under the wind flag, where everyone could see it. No speech, no statement, just a choice, clear and final. By Monday morning, Range 15 had a new visitor, a young woman. Barely 20, nervous, posture stiff, Anna watched her through the scope. Not judging, just observing. After 5 minutes, the girl walked away from the firing line and sat on the gravel. Head in her hands, Anna approached slowly. Knees too tight, she said softly. You're tensing before you breathe. The girl looked up, embarrassed. Sorry, I thought I was ready. Anna knelt beside her. You're not, but that's the right place to start. The girl smiled, just barely, and for the first time since she held that black badge. Anna felt still, because maybe success wasn't about being the ghost at the center of the system. Maybe it was about being seen, quietly, honestly, and helping others become the thing the world never expected. Why was a civilian shooter invited to brief the Pentagon's counter-sniper division, then vanished the next day without a word? The briefing room was cold, not just in temperature but in tone: dark suits, brass shoulders, tablet screens, and sharp eyes. The Pentagon had called her in directly, not through Harrison, not through Torres, not even through Admiral Chun. She was flown in under quiet orders, given a room, a name tag, no uniform, just Advisor Hansen, a civilian shooter who had somehow risen through myth and whispers into the highest chamber of tactical thought. And now, the room expected her to speak. Anna stood alone near the projection screen. She wore no makeup, no podium, no introduction, only a simple slide. Title: Unknown Variables. What you're not training for. Her voice, when it came, was soft and firm. You're asking me to explain how I disrupted standard operating protocols using nothing but silence, breath, and instinct. You're asking me to justify why someone without rank could stop your best teams in real-time simulations. The truth? She paused. I didn't break your systems. I just didn't grow up inside them. Several in the room shifted, uncomfortable. Anna continued. You train for knowns. I trained for doubt. You standardize reactions. I cultivated questions. She clicked the next slide. A wind chart. Erratic. Uncooperative. Sniping is about solving problems you can't predict. And for years, I was the problem you didn't predict. Someone at the table raised a hand. Then what do you recommend? Anna's eyes didn't blink. Stop teaching your shooters to mimic. Teach them to disappear. Not from the enemy, but from the need. To be acknowledged, because real power doesn't brag. Her voice quieted. It acts. The room fell into silence. No one clapped, but no one argued. And for Anna, that was enough. The next morning, her hotel room was empty. No sign of departure? No. Checked out bags. No forwarded contact. Just one envelope, left on the desk beside the window, inside. A single note. Handwritten. I've done what I came to do. Now it's your turn to see what you'll do without me. And beneath it, her old academy badge. Still unpolished. Still simple, but heavier now. Back at the academy. Range 15 had been quiet for days, until one morning, the gate officer noticed something. A new placard, not a replacement, an addition. Beneath the name A. Hansen, etched in the metal, were 5 words. Never a student, always a mirror. Students. Stopped to read it, instructors too. Some didn't understand. Some didn't agree. But the ones who trained under her, the ones who had changed, felt the truth of it. Because she hadn't just taught them to shoot straighter. She taught them to think, to question, to wait, to breathe. Torres found a package in her mailbox. That afternoon, no return address, inside. Anna's Win notebook, pages worn, filled with notes in multiple languages, equations, scrawlings, handwritten margins with thoughts that danced between math and philosophy, and at the very back, a small photograph, Anna, standing on range 3, years ago. No medals, no weapon, just her, watching the horizon like it might speak back. On the back of the photo, in ink, you can't always fight for silence, but you can teach them how to hear through the noise. Torres closed her eyes and smiled. Months passed, the military adjusted. New drills were implemented built on Anna's simulations. Civilian shooters were now part of classified advisory protocols. Her methods were taught in closed-door rooms. Her name became code for a philosophy. Quiet over chaos, precision over power, truth over tradition. But Anna? No one saw her again. Some say she moved to the Pacific Northwest. Others say she teaches under an alias. A few claim she trains foreign operatives off-grid. But most know she wouldn't want anyone to know, because she didn't care about being the story. She cared about changing how it was told. One day, a girl arrived at range 15. New recruit. Barely 17. First time on the line, she looked up at the sign. The one with Anna's name, and below it, those 5 haunting words. Never a student, always a mirror. She didn't understand it fully, not yet, but something in her stood straighter. Her breath steadied, and when she looked through the scope, she saw more than a target. She saw a path, not paved with medals or orders, but with footsteps, left by someone who never needed to be loud to be undeniable. And sometimes, dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.